All right, let's try that again. So, like I said, Jocce Marklund, and I'm an indie game developer, and I've been an indie game developer since 2010. And I'm kind of a jack of all trades, which in my case means that I do pretty much everything that has to do with game development, except for music, because I cannot make music. And that also makes me not an expert in anything, but I'm like proficient enough to do something and make sure it's okay at an okay level at least. I did win BAFTA, which is like a game developer award in England, or a British version of the Oscar, 2010, which is something I had to mention because Cherie forced me to.
Yes, it's amazing. Why shouldn't you?
And I also attended 2 Arctic game pitches last couple of years, and I won both of them. And I think that's like some recent stuff that I'm kind of proud of as well. I used to be a lead designer at Level 8 before they shut down the company, which was kind of fun in some ways, because I can now be a game development freelancer. So this is my job right now, and I think it's amazing. Before starting, I want to mention that I have a lot of slides and very short amount of time. So if I go too fast, let me know. And if there's something I explain poorly, just interrupt me or write in the chat, which I can see now, and just like let me know, and I can stop and rephrase it. And here's some of the games that I've been working with. Most of them have been like my own games that I've been developing myself, but some of them has also been like team projects and school projects and stuff like that. So these are like my indie games and not my professional games. So there's no Level 8 game here, for example. A short agenda for today, which probably has been haven't been updated properly because I just made a last second switch in the slides. But I want to talk about like content software and what you typically use, like what it looks like when you develop content for like a lot of different, or like most of the different disciplines, but also like what is content and what is assets and stuff like that. And I also made up a scenario where we're supposed to design and make a new mission for a game. And I also want to show you some slides from my game Necken, which I released in March this year. And if we have time, which we probably won't, I have some game jam tips from my own experience and from sources and friends and stuff like that. So when we talk about content, we usually talk about our a cluster or a collection of assets, like something that can be enjoyed and something that can be consumed by a player or a consumer. So a new content or content for a game could be levels to play, or new stories to experience, or a couple of new weapons for a shooter game, or like something that is consumable in some sense. And it's made out of assets, which we usually divide into like different disciplines. So artists make sprites, which is a picture, and they also make 3D models for 3D games and stuff like that, and a couple of different types of assets that I will be showing today as well. And if we're talking about like content, we can talk about a new mission, like I said, or new classes for an MMORPG, like World of Warcraft, where we create new classes, or new worlds that we can explore, like a new area that is unlocked in the latest update, for example. So when we add content, we're talking about like more of the same game typically. And going into like asset creation, we made a couple of examples where talk about the most common disciplines, and one of them is creating music. So this is roughly what it looks like when you create music from a computer, and not like recording your guitar and recording your, I don't know, flute. So I've listed a couple of different softwares that you can use. And if you're interested in getting into music and trying music, you can look at some of them. And I added a $ for software that is that they need to pay for. And if it's not a $, it's free. So you can just download it and try it out and see if that's something that you might enjoy. So typically you have a software that looks like this, where you're making music files and provide that to either provide that yourself and add it to the project, or you send it to someone who is responsible for adding it themselves. In some way, in some projects, the programmer is responsible for adding stuff to the project. Especially when you have very little experience, you might be like afraid of doing it wrong. So you're sending it to the programmer who knows the software instead of doing it yourself. And I do recommend trying out like the software and Unity or Unreal, for example, depending on which game development engine you're using. So just get to know the engine a bit and make sure that your content or your assets that you're creating, you can add them yourself. It will be very helpful for both you and your team. When you create audio effects, it's like I have some old scenarios from classmates where they talked about, oh, I just recorded using my microphone today. I made French fries and recorded that, and I added the sound of me breaking a cucumber, and then I stretched that sound, and I added I splashed a tomato, and I added that as well, but backwards, and that's how I got the laser sound. And like people work like that, and I think it's amazing that you can like make a cucumber sound like a laser, or the other way around, I guess. And in my case, I make a bit simpler games. So I use this software, which is called Chiptone, where you're pretty much have a digital synth, so you can pull and drag all the different sliders. If you can see my cursor, you have a lot of knobs you can turn in settings and all that stuff for like creating a synth type of sound. And I personally enjoy that. And moving on to art, we have, especially 2D art, we usually provide a flat image like a PNG file or a JPEG file, but PNG file is probably the most common one, where you're either using Photoshop or Asebrite or a software called GIMP. And there's also like a lot of different marketplaces where you can download sprites for free if you want to have them available, or like you need sprites for your game, but you don't have the skill, for example, or you don't have the time. And you can also buy already made assets if you want to. And moving on to 3D art, we're looking more into the creation of a 3D object. So it's pretty much like sculpting, like creating a sculpture from the computer. So if you like to work with clay and stuff like that, it's pretty much similar in a sense. So you're creating a 3D object, and as you can see on the picture, there's a 3D cube, and it looks kind of boring. It's gray, but the artist can also add a lot of textures and animate and make sure that they can move in the correct way and stuff like that. And my family just got home, so if you hear a lot of background noise, you know why. So we can create stuff in 3D as well. And for some games that's like required, but in most cases, I do recommend working with 2D when you're doing game jams, because it's a lot faster to get started and create stuff. And it's also a lot easier to have something. So the process of having something that works, not necessarily something that looks good, but something that is usable, is so much faster when you're working with 2D. And time is pretty much like the resource that you don't have during a game jam. So that's why I do recommend 2D. One aspect is level design, and that is pretty much the creation of the level. So if you played Super Mario or any type of game, there's usually a level that you can play, and someone is responsible responsible for putting out the ground, putting a couple of clouds in the air, a couple of boxes that you can jump on, and placing the enemies as well, and making sure that the game has a good pace. So it starts easy, but then it gets harder, and the last level is probably one of the hardest, and stuff like that. So that's the job of the level designer. And there's not really like a one way to do it. I mentioned Ogmo Editor, which is some kind of editor that you can use as an external software, but you can also make them directly in Unity if you're using Unity, or again Unreal as well, or you can build your own level editor, or like there's a bunch of different ways that you can do this. For one of my first games, I actually made models using Lego. So I built a Lego version of the level, and then I had a notepad document on the computer, and I printed out like 0 and 1 and 0 and 1 for like where there's a Lego piece, and that was translated into a level in the game later. So there's a bunch of different ways to create levels, and pen and paper is always there. Like it always works when you want to plan a level. Same thing with game design and writing. Like if you're working with writing, you obviously need to write. So you need some kind of software for that, Word or Notepad or Google Docs or whatever it might be, or might even be Excel in some cases. And as a game designer, you're typically sitting somewhere and thinking about game mechanics and thinking about how the game should be structured and why, and what it's supposed to do, and how it's supposed to work, like all the different things in the game, how should they work together and stuff like that. And you also need to document this and make sure that everyone on the team knows what they should do and knows what you have planned. So if I have a game mechanic that is jumping, for example, when the player is jumping, the player can hold the button to have a long jump, or just press the button quickly to have a shorter jump. And I need to specify so that the programmer can build this. So specify all the details and stuff like that. So game design and writing is pretty much like you can do this wherever, like outside with a cup of tea. You can do a lot of game design there, for example, or at the beach or whatever. So the example that I had was, imagine that we have a game that is already out and we have a lot of players, and we're supposed to create new content. And in this case, we're supposed to create a new mission for the hero that you play. And we've broken this down to 4 different sections that we're going to talk about. One of them is the mission story. One of them is the game mechanic that we're going to introduce. And one of them is the new level that we're going to build. And then we're also introducing 2 new enemies in the game. So the roles that we need for this new mission is a 2D artist, a 3D artist, like I just mentioned. We need the story writer. We also need the designer and the level designer. And we need the composer that makes the music, and we need the sound designer that makes the audio effects. But we also need a programmer who is responsible for writing the code to make sure that the game is actually running. So the programmer's job is basically to create the skeleton of the game, and the artist and everyone else is supposed to create the muscle and the flesh and the skin. But at the core, programmer needs to write the code to make sure that the game is running. So first off, if we start with the mission story, we can ask questions like, what is the setting? Where does it take place? How does it tie into the current world that we have? Is it a space game, or is it a fantasy game? How do we fit that into the game? What is the mission about? Like, is it an isolated mission that doesn't really connect with the rest of the game, like a filler from an anime series, for example? Like it doesn't really affect the game. It's just a bonus mission. Or does it introduce stuff that is going to be available throughout the rest of the game as well? And what kind of characters do we need to introduce? What kind of dialogue do we need to have? And how are we working with storytelling? Like, are we introducing a long text that explains like how your stranded on this planet, or do we tell this story by having a planet where the player is isolated and there's a burning spaceship somewhere, and you have to figure that out yourself, or however we like to tell the story in our game. So for this job, we need a story writer mainly. So like to figure out like what is happening and what is the story, what is the characters like, and stuff like that. We can also add artists that can create character concepts or mood boards, or like draw some environment sketches and visualize the story a bit. And somehow we also need to get the story into the game, either by a text file or directly in the code or whatever it might be. So the story writer needs to provide the actual text or texts as well for all the dialogues and stuff like that. And we can skip that. But if we move to the game mechanic, we are talking about like what is a game mechanic, and typically we have something that you can do in the game or something that can happen in the game can be defined as a game mechanic. So if you're a player and you can jump, jumping is a game mechanic. And if you can smack your head into a box that can give you random items, that's a game mechanic. And if you can pick up the flower to be able to create fireballs that flies around, that's a game mechanic. And typically game mechanic is a weird word that is kind of hard to explain, but we need to decide like what is the game mechanic supposed to do, and why, and what are we trying to provide here. And as the game designer, we need to figure out the details and the rules and the limitations of the mechanic. Like typically when you are in the air, you cannot jump. And if you can jump, we have introduced double jump, which is a mechanic that is like very specific for a lot of games. But if you have double jumped before and still not touch the ground, you cannot double jump again. Like that kind of rule set we need to figure out and also document so that the programmer can make that happen. And we need to think about like, can the mechanic be overused? Can the players pretty much hack the game or skip a lot of the content for the game by jumping over a ledge, for example, or stuff that we didn't really think that the player would figure out, or that we didn't really know that they could do. Is the game mechanic that we introduce only available in this new mission? So if we introduce a laser pistol, for example, like is the player supposed to have that laser pistol throughout the rest of the game, or is it for this mission only, and then they're going back to their fantasy sword, for example? And our designer's job is also to make sure that we balance the game mechanic, which means that we need to make sure that it doesn't do too much damage or too low, and it's still like it's fun to use it, but it's not like either too good or too bad. And the game is not too hard, and the new mission kind of is slightly harder than the previous mission and stuff like that. And like I said, the designer is mostly doing all of this, and the programmer is working with like implementing the game mechanic as well. And we probably have an artist that needs to make a couple of new assets. So if we have a laser pistol, someone needs to create a picture or a model of a laser pistol, and also the bullets or the laser effects or whatever it might be. And when everything is done, we also need someone to have audio, or like make sure that it sounds like a laser and it sounds correctly when it should sound like a laser, and stuff like that. So all the parts come together by the end. And skipping to the new level, if we also want to introduce like you're suddenly at a desolated planet for the first time, where does the level take place? Well, my example could be used, for example, but what is the player supposed to do on this planet? Are they supposed to get back to their main ship, or are they supposed to get back to the portal, which takes them back to their fantasy world where they came from? Or Are they saving someone or retrieving something or collecting a bunch of items? Are they supposed to be crafting items? Like, what are they supposed to do? And we also need to figure out, like, what is the rules for this level that we're introducing? Is it the same rule set as all the other levels, or do we introduce new stuff? Like, for example, this mission on this specific planet, we have another type of gravity. So you can jump a lot higher. You can jump as usual, you can double jump as usual, but you're jumping a lot higher than in previous missions, because that's the new mechanic that we introduce, or the new twist that we introduce. We're bending the rules a bit. How is the level supposed to be structured? Is it supposed to be open, like in Zelda, for example? Latest Zelda is very open and you can go pretty much wherever you want to? Or is it a game that, like, should the level be a couple of narrow corridors, or do you have multiple choices, or like, how is the main structure supposed to work in this new level that we're using or making? And do we allow shortcuts, and where do we place them, and what is the purpose of that? Like for Skyrim, for example, when they had all the caves that they made, I think they made a really good job with like having a cave just go straight downwards, and you're killing the thing, and then you get back, and like you move forward more or less, and then suddenly you end up just where you started, so you don't have to walk all the way back. You're pretty much finding a shortcut each and every time to save some time, and I think that's kind of good. So this is the job of the level designer, and for some cases a programmer might need to assist as well, like implementing new mechanics or adjust mechanics, like for the gravity example. A programmer might need to fix that, or make sure that the game allows for that kind of tweaking. And an artist might make some new props, maybe some new like space cactus, or space grass, or space cow, or whatever it might be. And typically we want a new setup, a new music piece as well. So the composer needs to create more music. Like we can't really reuse our fantasy style music for this planet. So we need to make more music. And if we talk about new enemies, we're supposed to introduce 2 new enemies. And in this case, we need to start with like, what should the enemies look like? Well, we do have a lot of fantasy creatures throughout the game. Do we need to reuse one of them? Like, we could reuse our fantasy cow and make it into a space cow, or are we supposed to create a completely new race with an entire new set of, like, they have 14 arms and 15 legs, or like, what are we creating? And most importantly, what kind of behavior do they have? In a lot of games, we have a behavior which is usually referred to like how they move, how they interact with the player, and what they can do. Can the enemies chase you when they discover you, or are they like dumb and just move back and forth? We typically reuse enemies a lot and just give them another visual representation, and typically another color to signal to the player that this is the same as before, but it's slightly harder. So in a lot of games, you have the skeleton, for example, and you can kill it, and then you can, so later in the game, you can find the red skeleton, which works like a skeleton, but the red signifies that it's never being killed, like you cannot kill it. So whenever you strike it down, it takes a couple of seconds, and then it revives again infinitely. So that's a special rule set for the red skeleton, but it works like a skeleton. So how are we introducing new rule sets, or reworking old rule sets, or adjusting this new type of enemy? And we kind of need to decide that part. And this is sometimes the job of the designer, especially with the rule set thing. We need to make sure that the designer gets to find the structure, or like find the use of the enemy. Like, we're introducing a new type of enemy that has that doesn't chase you, because we need to use it for this specific puzzle or this specific part of the level, or whatever it might be. So we need to make sure that we have a use for a new enemy, and an artist make sure that we create a character concept to make a couple of sketches so we can figure out like, does it work with 14 arms or should we stick to 4? And 4 might be better. Do we really need 14 arms? No, it doesn't really look good. So we scrap that idea. And we need an artist to also create the assets. So if we're making a 2D game, they need to make the sprites, the pictures, or if we're making a 3D game, someone needs to make the model and the texture and the animations and all that stuff. And like I mentioned, a programmer also needs to implement the new mechanics that we introduce or the changes for this enemy, or if it's a completely new enemy, we need to build it from scratch. And a designer might tweak the numbers a bit and make sure that, well, it fits the game or the difficulty, or it's fun, as fun as it can be to face this enemy. It's challenging and all that. And again, we have a sound designer who creates the sound effects for our space cow with 14 arms, or if we reuse a skeleton for the 10th time or whatever it might be. So we still need a couple of new audio effects and stuff like that. So that's typically the roles for a scenario where we have to create a new mission for our game. And switching focus a bit, we're looking for a game jam, and in the center we have a lot of different roles, and the two to the right, the blue ones, the project leader and the testing, that I haven't really mentioned before, but typically you have someone that is taking charge and making sure that everyone knows what they should do, everyone has their cup of coffee, and everyone, like someone that makes sure that the team is moving forward in a good pace. And we also need someone who is a bit more responsible for testing the game to make sure that you cannot abuse certain mechanics, or you cannot break the game, make it crash, or whatever it might be. So these are typically the roles that we need to cover in any type of game. But if we are making a game jam, the bottom 4 are like the most important ones, where we need someone to make art or collect art if we don't want to make our own. We need someone to program the game, and we need someone that is designing the mechanics and spending a lot of time twisting and turning the numbers, and like, is 4 better than 5? And we need to play test and make sure that, okay, so if we have 4 instead of 5, that means that the player can jump a lot, cannot jump as high. Do we need to adjust the levels? Yes, we do. Okay, so I need to tell the level designer to adjust the platforms and lower them so that the player can actually reach them and all that stuff. And someone that is taking a bit more responsibility of, like, with audio in general, both audio effects and also music. And one of the things that I really want to mention is this is the perfect opportunity to try and also learn. Like Sherry mentioned, for example, I want to try to make a game, but I don't know anything. So I will be managing the team. Like, this is the perfect opportunity to pick one of them and try it out. Like, if you're interested in drawing, or if you're interested in the more technical aspect, or interested in combining game mechanics, or if you're interested in audio creation, like, try it out. Why not? It's a perfect opportunity to like, get a new skill, and it will probably be a lot more fun than just sitting on the side watching everyone else making a game. And like, don't be afraid of failing, because it's an important part of learning a new craft as well. And there's no science behind this. It's just practice and getting, like, your own, like, learning on your own most of the time. So quickly, I want to mention, like, my game that I made. I spent roughly two and a half years making this, and it's available on Steam if you want to buy it for some reason. But it's a kind of hard game where if you fail once, you have to restart the game from scratch. And typically the genre is called roguelike, and the genre is very focused around generating random levels, and the game being hard and punishing and very mean to the player. And like, so far 0 players have completed the game in hard mode. So, I mean, it is hard. And if we look at art, for example, I'm using 2D. So there's nothing that is like a mesh that is modeled, or like if you imagine the clay. So everything that you see is just a picture. So there's a bunch of different pictures drawn on top of each other to make sure that it looks like an environment. And they are usually 32 by 32 pixels, which means that I have very few pixels to work with. So if you look at the animals on the bottom right, that's like roughly the width that you have available. I can't really make the moose wider because the 32 by 32 pixel limit that I set for myself, like that's the width that I can work with. So that means that the scale is kind of off. If you compare the bear and the moose, for example, or compare the bear to the fox, and I need to make sure that it looks like a fox first, and then worry about size and scaling later. I used mostly Photoshop that I borrowed from the internet library. And I also bought Aseprite because I wanted to learn a new software that is more focused on creating pixel art. And I really recommend buying Aseprite. I think it's super amazing to work with, and it's also very cheap. And they both work great with Unity. So there's nothing like there's usually a preferred software for an engine, but in this case, like they all work just fine.
Jocce, I'm sorry to interrupt. What did you say the software was that was really focused on
pixel art?
Yeah.
This one, Aseprite.
Oh, Aseprite. Oh, thanks.
Yep. So for design, I have a combination of a billion physical papers and a couple of Excel sheets. So I have a couple of Excel sheets that looks kind of like this. So this is the main setting for the difficulty curve in the game. So these numbers represent a bag of tiles that can be randomized in the game, and some of them represent like how much more health the enemies should have and stuff like that, and a couple of other settings. So I have a couple of sheets like this, but mostly I work with papers, and a lot of papers. So I think it's roughly a thumb in height, like this pile of paper, and that's how I like to work, and there's nothing stopping me from working like that. And typically designers want to work digitally or with physical papers, and I'm like 100% physical paper kind of guy. I think it's a lot of fun. For level design, I created a software, or like I wrote some code that generates a level based on a couple of different rules that I made up myself, and it looks kind of like Tetris, but in the end it ends up as a level. So all the way from the left, where I'm throwing a lot of different level pieces on each other and see which ones stick, and then turning that into a complete level in the end. So I don't have level design. I don't do level design in my game. I do programming that solves level design, more or less. And in terms of music, I don't really have any experience with making music. And as much as I want to talk about like the music in game, I found a person that I really enjoyed working with, and I paid him a lot of money, and he made some music, and we set a tone. So the game is supposed to be set in the Swedish forest during the 1600s, and we wanted some instruments to represent that, and we also wanted to incorporate some chiptune music. We wanted real instruments, but also the chiptune kind of tone. Since it's a pixel game, I think that it works well with chiptune type of music. So we splashed in some chiptune in there as well. And in sound effects, I used this software called Chiptone, which is free. And I mentioned this previously as well. So I'm pretty much like, I'm not sure if you can see it, but these are buttons to randomize a preset. So if you want to have a boom kind of sound, you can press the boom button and you get a completely randomized boom sound. So I pressed this 4,000 times until I found something that sounded good, and then I saved it. And then I need to have a one-up kind of sound as well. So I pressed that 4,000 times, and then figure out like, does this fit my game? And then that's how I made the sound for the game. So I don't know the software. I know how to press these buttons more or less, and don't tell anyone because that's a company secret.
This will just be on YouTube, but okay,
yeah.
thank you.
No, I mean, I'm very upfront with music and audio. It's not my thing at all. So this is a quick way for me to get around that. In terms of writing, it's the same thing. I wrote a lot of novels when I was younger, but I kind of realized that they weren't really that good. And I kind of focused on other things in the game. So there's very little text, and I added it directly in Unity. So I wrote it in a notepad, and then I copy pasted it into Unity like straight away. So I don't have a fancy system that reads files and all that. I want to make this as quickly as possible because I hate writing it right now. And after that, I'm kind of done with talking about like content creation and assets overall. So I could either like, I'm not sure how set we are on like keeping this 1 hour, but I have 2 slides with my personal game jam tips, or we can just jump straight into questions.
No,
depends.
Game jam tips, please. We have the time.
All right. So one of the things that I think is most important when you go to a game jam is that you're there to have fun, right? And you need to make sure that you team up with people that you can work with, that you can have fun with. So because you're creating a temporary team for like 24 hours or 48 hours or a week or whatever it might be, and you kind of need to focus on having fun, because when you have fun, you're like, well, it's more fun, and that's what we want, right? It's not a competition. We're there to connect and learn, more or less. And we really need to make sure that we settle for a simple game idea. So typically we focus on 1, maximum of 2 different game mechanics, and make sure that they work and they're as fun as possible. And it's better to have a small, like super small finished game than have a bigger game that we didn't really have the time to finish. And typically, if we have a 48-hour jam during a weekend, I do recommend spending 1 day of building the game mechanic, and after that you should spend the rest of the time polishing and making sure that it works as good as possible. So if it's a game mechanic that is doable in a day, well, then it sounds like a good size. And again, focus on one game mechanic I just talked about, but roughly 50-50. So spending half the time developing the game and the other half polishing the game, making sure that the art is looking as good as possible. There's no bugs. We add the audio effects, we add some music, maybe we add a menu, we add a difficulty level, so you can try the hard mode if we have time for that, and just make sure that you add everything that we need to make sure that the game is extra nice. The second part is to actually take breaks. It's very easy to see that 48 hours is not a lot of time. If we spend 8 hours sleeping, that is 16 hours in total. So 48 minus 16. Okay, so that's the time we have left. We also need to travel back and forth, and we also need to eat. That's 2 hours or maybe 4 hours. And then we need to walk the dog. And people tend to work their ass off during a game jam. And I just want to mention again, like, take breaks. Like, fresh air is great for you, or at least so I've heard. I already mentioned consider making a 2D game, and it is easier and it's faster, and typically it's more fun to have a finished game than having an unfinished game. If you feel like you need to, you can use a simple software for project management, or you can use Post-its, because Post-its are super cheap and they are so underrated, and they're just perfect for the purpose, which is writing a task on a piece of paper and like putting them up on a screen or on a wall or something, and rearrange them to make sure that we put them in order. So the higher up on the wall, the more important the task is, or this part of the wall belongs to me, so this is my task, and this part of the wall belongs to Cherie, so that's her kind of tasks, and these are completed, so we can put them over here and just have some kind of management, so we know what we're supposed to do, more or less. And always having a playable build for two reasons, and mostly it's because people tend to walk by and be like, hey, can I try your game? And when they do that, you don't really want to say stuff like, yeah, the game is broken right now, we're building something and it will take 4 hours before it's completed, so if you can come back in 4 hours, that would be perfect. That will not happen. And always having something playable means that you, like, if we tie this into a game reference, it's like saving your game, or pressing like save in the menu. So we can always load an older save file if we make something that doesn't really work right now exactly at the time where someone passed by and said, oh, well, that looks cool, can I try it? So we can always load something playable. And if we do that, we always have a finished game. So if we save and like create a playable build by the end of Friday, for example, if we just eat pizza throughout the entire Saturday and the entire Sunday, we'll still have a finished game. And then you can spend the rest of the time just adding more fun to the game and more polish and more effects and stuff like that. But always having a finished game is kind of fun. And we do that by making sure that we always have something that is playable. And that's kind of what I mentioned meant with like fail safe as well. If we abandon the project, or if we get in an argument and decide to break up the team, or whatever it might be, we always have a playable build to fall back on. And if you're really into like game development, source control is an optional a way for us to not only save the playable build, but save the project. So there's a difference between having a playable build and having like the project, all the code and all the audio files and all the text files and all the art and stuff like that. So source control is a software that is a bit complicated to use typically, and the main purpose is to make sure that we back up our code. Just like the reason you're using Dropbox, you're not using it because it's cool, you're using it to keep your documents safe in case your fire or in case your computer bursts into flames. But it also is an easy way for us to share files. So if we have a system where everything is stored in the cloud, I can download the version, make some changes, upload my changes, and you can download my changes. The option would be to pass around a USB stick, and that's a lot more work in the end. And that's it. I did it. Under an hour.
Congratulations, Jocce.
Oh, thank you.
Amazing. I've heard this before, and it feels like I'm learning new information still. So what are your thoughts on this? Did we scare you away now? Sandra?
Yeah, my main concern is that I actually don't have any computer skills. Like my level is like Word and yeah, that's it.
Yeah.
So I don't know the lingo and stuff like that. So I'm mostly concerned about that I'll get like lost when like people start to talk and yeah, you know that program.
Yeah.
No.
I can actually assure you that we will have a person, actually two persons working with a platform that we will use, Discord. I will tell you more about Discord later. And they will sit like a tech support, literally. So you can literally write to them like, how do I open this? How do I do this? And they are there to help us do that, because I don't know it either. and I'm there to learn as well as I'm planning this. So no worries at all. And I mean, if you can use words, you can actually write. You might take on the role that that is the project managing. You never know. So no worries at all. This jam, well, any game jams actually don't need any. You don't need any like Jocce, what's the word? Förkunskaper.
Prerequisites. I cannot pronounce that word. Like skills like, beforehand.
Yeah. No previous skills like needed.
I think that a game jam like this is a perfect opportunity to ask a lot of questions. You have a lot of hopefully a lot of people that is there to have fun and communicate is not the word I'm looking for, but connect and make new acquaintances and stuff like that. And I think it's always nice to like ask if you're not sure. And if someone is rude, they are obviously not the there to have fun, and they should not be there. But a game jam is typically a space where people are really helping each other out. And I've seen a lot of different team members jump between teams just to help out. Like one team is helping the other just to make sure that they can all finish. And if I go back to this slide, I think this is the perfect opportunity to just try. Like if you decide that, okay, so artists, I kind of want to try that and make 2D art, why not try it and see if that's something that you want to invest more time in. And if it's not, then you tried it, and they can like not do that for the next game jam, or you know what to not focus on, if that makes sense. So I think the game jam is pretty much there to teach you how to get started, if that helps, I guess.
I hope you feel more comfortable now, Sandra. What do you think, Anna?
I just have to say, yeah, I'm looking forward to it, and I'm gonna move now, so I may get disconnected.
Oh, so no worries.
Okay. Yeah.
Can you just, by the way, just write your email address in the chat so that I can link us all together, and then I will send you Discord invitation. Lovely, thank you. All right, Anna, what do you think?
I think that game jams and usually making games, indie games, are pretty fun. I'm not taking it too much of a stress. It's about learning new things and connecting, like you said.
Lovely. And you have already done this once, so you're now practically a pro, right?
Yes and no.
Sarah, what do you think?
I'm quite excited. Looking forward to trying out all the different roles.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What do you think you will try out first? Like, what kind of role do you think you'll try out first?
I'm not sure. Mostly like have experience with the programming and some small experience with pixel art. So maybe might be good to try out like those parts that I'm not so familiar with at first.
All right, cool. Anna, what's your role in your last game jam?
I was level designer and project management a bit in the first game that we made about a year ago.
Okay, cool. Do you think that you will try out the same role or same roles or different roles?
I'm not sure quite yet. I would like to try programming. I have some experience, and the art is pretty much kind of my comfort zone. So I'm not sure yet that
Okay. So
I stay in comfort zone or not.
That sounds great. You don't need to decide it now anyways. And you both can actually just send me your email address as well. And please do ask Jocce questions about content making, well, content creating.
Do you learn by yourself coding, or did you go to some school? Or
So I went to the University of Skövde in like 12, 13 years ago, and I studied game design. And I thought game design was like during the game projects that we had, we were a lot of game designers in one single team. So we didn't really have that much work to do. And I didn't really want to sit still and do nothing. So I started picking up programming, and I started with an engine called Game Maker. And it's a really good software that is really easy to get started with. So if you want to get into programming, I really recommend starting with Game Maker. And I kind of liked it. So I added a couple of programming courses to my education. But after that, I'm mostly self-taught. So I have been programming both on a hobby level, making games, but also professionally for like roughly 12 years. So most of it has to do with just practicing. Like if you want to become a carpenter, for example, you have to get your hands dirty and you have to get the experience and just do it. And that kind of applies to each and every, like all the skills as well. So I wasn't really that good for the first couple of years, but slowly I started to learn like how you should actually structure your code and how you can code efficiently and stuff like that. So it's a really good skill to have, at least, I think.
Cool.
I haven't ever heard this Game Maker, but I think I give it a try in weekend.
Yeah, do it. I mean, typically people recommend using Unity and getting started with Unity, but I actually don't. I think Unity is a bit more complex than it has to be for a beginner, because it starts with you having to program a programming language that is kind of hard. Like C# is kind of hard to get started with, but in Game Maker you can program visually, so you can drag and drop game logic into set them in order, and you can pretty much program using pictures. And I think that's a great way to get started with like learning logic and learning how to structure logic first, and then you can start moving to writing the code that does the same thing. But getting started with the visual programming is like, it's so much easier to get the first couple of experience points for your first level, if you want to make a game reference.
Yeah, I think Unity is pretty hard.
Yeah, and
you have to know physics and coding and
all
kind of stuff.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's like Unity and Unreal are the two biggest engines on the market right now, but they're also the two most difficult engines to get started with if you have zero experience. And most of the schools, at least in Sweden, they start with, here's an introduction to Unity, and we're getting started with programming for the first time in Unity straight away. And it's always hard to teach new students like both how programming works, but also how the software Unity works. So splitting them up would be a lot easier, especially since programming can be visualized in a lot of softwares. So Game Maker is absolutely the way that I got started, and I'm so glad for it.
I haven't tried out either yet, but I think I would crush my own ego that I have a picture of myself that I'm like a fast learner, but when it comes to like Unity and Unreal, I don't think that about myself anymore. Seems pretty hard.
So this game jam would be a perfect opportunity to get started then.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Yeah, I should join the game jam. I shouldn't be working.
No, you should definitely download Game Maker and get started with at least one tutorial or a couple of tutorials just to get started.
Yeah, I will. I'm writing it up now. Download Game Maker. All right. Okay, cool. So are there any further questions or any further like game jam tips from you, Jocce?
No, I don't. Like the most important one is to like have fun. And personally, I think it's more fun if you can spend the time learning new stuff and not like get past the point where you're afraid to get started or afraid to try it out, and no one is expecting you to make like the perfect art when you're starting out, so just get started, more or less.
Or like the very known logo that we know of, probably all of us, just do it. Swoosh. Sarah, do you have any questions?
Nothing I can think of right now.
All right. And I just want you to know that I will be connecting you to a Discord channel soon as my colleague helps me help me with that. And Jocce will actually be available for like questions during Saturday between 10 and 12 Swedish time. So that would be 12 to 13. No. 12, 11 to 13, right?
Yes.
Yeah, okay, cool. But I will send you the info, in a written info in an email so that you can keep track of the days and so on. And it's oh, what happened? There you go. And it's like Jocce said, think 50-50. Right, Jocce? 50-50. So make a finish game first and then polish it, like fix the small things later. So think Saturday, like make a working game, and then on Sunday make the working game prettier.
Pretty much, yeah.
Yeah. But I will send you like a list of things to think about soon. And like I said before, Jocce, you will be available to answer questions through Discord. So if there are any questions, I will send them to you, and you can just be our guidance into this jam.
Absolutely.
Lovely. Sandra, are you still with us? Do you have any more questions?
Not right now. I'm just thinking about should I bring a working computer or laptop to this thing?
Yeah.
Do I even have one?
Yeah. Oh, you don't have a working laptop?
No, maybe.
No worries. You can actually bring a notepad, like a physical one.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
I'll think I'll go old school on this.
yeah. Yeah, I mean there are jams where people just create board games as well. So I mean, why not? I don't think I think game jams are very like you form it yourself. It's you who decide to do what. And what I think scared me at first when I heard about game jam, that I thought that I need to have like a lot of now a lot of knowledge about like the programs and everything, but the truth is that I've seen that there are always people who can help you with things, and you can always team up with people that like completes you in a team. I think Anna can like ensure you that well everyone here I think can assure each other that no one can do anything like everything by themselves, especially not like in a weekend.
Yeah, that's too short of time.
Yeah, at least not for me. You, I mean, you may. I mean, you're a professional, but yeah, you don't count.
I'm not that professional, so just want to make that clear.
Yeah, but yeah, you can bring your notepad, no worries. But I think it's good that you have like some kind of computer that you can catch like right on Discord. Otherwise, you will be actually, yeah, you will have like teammates that have computers.
Yeah, I'll figure it out.
Yeah. You can always tune in through your phone as well, so no worries. Alrighty. If there aren't any more questions, yeah.
I was wondering, did you have a webinar last week?
Yeah.
Is there a recording of it? I missed it.
There is, but my dear colleague was very unstructured. So it was more like a dialogue, but I can definitely send you a WeTransfer link for the webinar.
Okay, thank you.
Just gonna write that up. Do you understand Swedish otherwise, Sara?
Yeah, it's my first language.
Oh, really? That's awesome. Well, then I can send you the one that we did in the spring, because that one was there were more people and it was more structured. And that's on YouTube, so I can send you the link.
Thanks.
No worries. Are there any more questions for the game jam or to Jocce? Right. I think we are crystal clear in this one. Then thank you very much for joining us. And I can't wait to see you on the game jam. And until then, I will keep you noted, like updated on what's happening, and I will send you like a pamphlet or with info later on.
Okay.
If there aren't any more questions, or if you don't have anything to say, I think this is it for us. Yeah. Thank you and good night.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Ska se, jag ska stänga.